I don't know if you've seen this yet, but Bill Gates had a recent interview. And of course, the question again about Jeffrey Epstein did come up. I did notice something. I noticed that his response this time around was different from the response that he had last year when he had the same question. And I want to also show you what Melinda said last year in reference to Jeffrey Epstein as well, because something is a little bit off here. Something is a little bit off. So let's take a look at this. Now, this is a clip from that interview that Bill Gates had. I'm just going to put this on full screen. Check this out.
Now, one of the issues that's dogged you is that of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, no, I had dinner with him and that's all.
Remember that.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
there never was any relationship of any kind.
Okay, let's hear it again, because I'm going to show you something different.
Now, one of the issues that's dogged you is that of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, no, I had dinner with him and that's all.
He said he had dinner with him and that's all. We're going to prove that's not true in just a second.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
there never was any relationship of any kind.
There never was any relationship of any kind. Is that true? Let's take a look back. I don't know. Bill, he might have forgotten what he said. I don't know. Let's take a step back at this interview that Bill Gates had. Now, this was right after him and his wife announced that they were having a divorce. I'm not going to get into all that. I don't really care about that. But I do want you to know that what you just heard there, it sounds a little bit different from what he said before. So let's go back. Let's go back in time. Here we go.
Gates also pressed on allegations that his relationship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein led to strains in his marriage.
Why did you continue to meet with him? When you met him, he was already a convicted sex offender. And do you regret that?
So notice they said relationship. Here we go. Hold on. Now, remember, he just told you in the recent interview that there was no relationship, that he had dinner with him.
I feel terrible about that.
Gates also pressed on allegations that his relationship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein led to strains in his marriage.
Relationship. But he just told you in the recent interview there was no relationship. Let's go on.
Why did you continue to meet with him? When you met him, he was already a convicted sex offender. And do you regret that?
He was also charged in 2008. For those of you who are not aware, the most recent charge where he was found, I don't know how to say this to be safe on YouTube, where he was found dead in his cell. He was convicted before that in 2008. And I think at that point he had to wear like an ankle bracelet or something like that. So the most recent conviction was not the first one. He had been charged before. And the reason why she's bringing that up is because Bill Gates' relationship started after he was already charged. So just keep that in mind.
I certainly made a huge mistake, not only meeting him in the first place, but I met with him a number of times. I had a goal of raising money for global health. I did.
Guys, this is really damning for Bill Gates. In the most recent interview that I just showed you, he said he had no relationship with him, and he said that he had dinner with him. Okay. But he just told you right here that he met with him several times, multiple times. Now, the woman in the recent interview, she did ask Bill Gates, well, what about the relationship between the foundations? He said there was no relationship. Is that true? Listen to what he said last year. Now, here we go about the relationship part.
First place, but I met with him a number of times. I had a goal of raising money for global health. I didn't realize that meeting with him almost downplayed the incredibly awful things he did. I learned more about that over time, but I'd add that to the list of big mistakes, including where Melinda's advice was sound, and I should have followed it sooner than I did.
A tumult.
So when it came to the foundations, there was a relationship. He reveals that in this interview. And in the most recent interview, he said there was no relationship in reference to the foundation. Which is it, Bill? Old interviews come back to bite people, man.
Tumultuous year for the philanthropist who for years has been sounding the alarm of an incoming pandemic. In 2015, releasing.
Okay, so that piece right there. So you heard the part there about the foundation. So there was a relationship, and there was also a relationship in reference to the foundation. So Bill Gates lied in that most recent interview. But now I want to show you, because they did interview Melinda Gates as well. And I want you to hear what she said. Again, this was last year, what she said about Jeffrey Epstein. And I want you to compare the two.
Or business or some kind of contact with Jeffrey Epstein, and that you were not, that was very upsetting to you. Did that play a role in the divorce at all in this process?
Yeah, as I said, it's not one thing, it was many things. But I did not like that he'd had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you made that clear to him?
I made that clear to him. I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, my heart breaks for these young women, because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It's awful.
You felt?
Let's hear what she said again, you guys. This piece right here is very important. Now, you had nightmares about this man. Listen.
Mm-hmm. And you made that clear to him?
I made that clear to him. I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified.
She said he was abhorrent and he was evil personified. After meeting him one time, and Bill continued the relationship with him. Someone make this make sense to me. If your wife tells you, whoa, this guy is evil, he's giving me the creeps, and you only met him one time, why would you continue to have a relationship with that guy? She goes on to say she had nightmares. Listen to this.
I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, my heart breaks for these young women, because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It's awful.
You felt?
She had nightmares, you guys.
That the moment you walked in, I didn't realize
that. He was awful.
That. Yeah. And you shared that with Bill, and he still continued to spend time with him?
Any of the questions remaining about what Bill's relationship there was, those are for Bill to answer.
Okay.
Does that sound suspicious to you guys? She was willing to go that far to tell all of that, to the point that she had nightmares about this guy. But then when it comes to the point where she's asked about Well, did you tell Bill about that? And he still continued to meet with them. All of a sudden, now it's, you got to talk to Bill about that. What's happening here? What are they trying to hide? I can't. JB says that is deeply this is weird. How many of you in the chat, especially those of you who are married, how many of you in the chat, if you were to tell your husband, listen, your friend that I just met for the first time, this one time, yeah, he's evil and I've been having nightmares about this guy. How many of you would be okay with your husband still continuing that relationship with him? This is bad. There's more. Because we're going to get into this article here from the New York Times. Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein many times despite his past. So you see Bill trying to say he just had dinner. Let's go on. Go down to this part here. Few, though, compared in prestige and power to the world's second richest person, a brilliant and intensely private luminary, Bill Gates. And unlike many others, Mr. Gates started the relationship after Mr. Epstein was convicted of sex crimes. I just want to reiterate this. I want you guys to see this piece because this is what I was trying to tell you. This is not someone who knew Jeffrey Epstein before there was the conviction. This is someone who knew him after he was convicted in 2008, and he continued the relationship with him. Do you really believe that Bill Gates didn't know about the conviction? Let's go on. Mr. Gates, the Microsoft co-founder, whose 100 billion plus fortune has endowed the world's largest charitable organization, has done his best to minimize his connections to Mr. Epstein. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him, he told the Wall Street Journal last month. You see how his story is continuing to change? He told the Wall Street Journal he didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him. In the interview I just played you, he said, yes, they did have a relationship and they also had a business relationship. And then in the most recent interview, which is the first clip that I showed you, he said they had dinner and there was no relationship. Which is it, Bill? I don't know. But something to me seems a little bit fishy. In fact, beginning in 2011, Mr. Gates met with Mr. Epstein on numerous occasions, including at least 3 times at Mr. Epstein's palatial Manhattan townhouse, and at least once staying late into the night, according to interviews with more than a dozen people familiar with the relationship. There's that word again. Ding, ding, ding. Employees of Mr. Gates Foundation also paid multiple visits to Mr. Epstein's mansion, and Mr. Epstein spoke with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and JP Morgan Chase about a proposed multi-billion-dollar charitable fund, an arrangement that had the potential to generate enormous fees for Mr. Epstein. So this is the second source that I'm showing you that confirms there was also a business relationship. What is Bill talking about? His lifestyle is very different and kind of intriguing, although it would not work for me, said Mr. Gates. He emailed colleagues in 2011 after his first get together with Mr. Epstein. Bridget Arnold, a spokeswoman for Mr. Gates, said he was referring only to the unique decor of the Epstein residence and Epstein's habit of spontaneously bringing acquaintances in to meet Mr. Gates. It was in no way meant to convey a sense of interest or approval, she said. Over and over, Mr. Epstein managed to cultivate close relationships with some of the world's most powerful men. He lured them with the whiff of money, and the proximity to other powerful, famous, or wealthy people, so much that many look past his reputation for sexual misconduct. And one of those people, ladies and gentlemen, as you just saw, was Bill Gates. This is terrible. Mr. Gates and the 51 billion Gates Foundation have championed the well-being of young girls. By the time Mr. Gates and Mr. Epstein first met, Mr. Epstein had served jail time for soliciting prostitution from a minor and was required to register as a sex offender. Ms. Arnold said that high-profile people had introduced Mr. Gates and Mr. Epstein and that they had met multiple times to discuss philanthropy. See, there's that multiple again. Then it goes on to say Bill Gates regrets ever meeting with Epstein and recognizes it was an error in judgment to do so. Gates recognizes that entertaining Epstein's idea related to philanthropy gave Epstein an undeserved platform that was at odds with Gates' personal values and the values of his foundation. Eric, can you put the link to this article in the chat? It's a lot longer article. But the point that I want to make here is in that most recent interview that you just saw of Bill Gates lied. So there's that. Listen, these old interviews come back. Like this, again, this was just a year ago. I remembered watching it. And I remember watching Melinda Gates' interview. So when I saw this one floating around on Twitter and he was trending and everything, I was like, I know Bill did not just sit up here and flat out lie when he gave an interview about this like a year ago and he was saying the exact opposite. So what is Bill Gates not telling? Thank you for the super chat, Mr. Day in the Park. Sabby, nobody speaks to truth as well as you do. Thank you so much, Mr. Day in the Park. And I think, is that Mo? That's Mo from The Simpsons. Oh, Mo! Brother Daniel says Gates regrets being caught having a relationship with Epstein. Yeah. It's like you can't erase it now, you know? It's there. People do know about it. Delthea says Bill Gates thinks money makes his butt not stink. So he does what he wants and thinks he will never have to answer to anyone. And don't forget, he's buying up all this farmland too. There was a woman, she came on a while back, Alice, I think her name was Alice. She told me, I have to go back and find that stream, but she said that Bill Gates was stealing water from her town. Mainstream media, especially the liberal outlets, they try to make it seem like Bill Gates is this charitable person and he's this great guy. There's tax write-offs that come along with charities. Just because you have a charity doesn't mean you're not stealing water from other people. And it also doesn't mean you weren't hanging out with shady people. Let's just keep it real.